assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe and Moth and Butterfly, because tonight is a very special Rock the Casbah from all the way across the Irish Sea to Ireland and to Morocco, of course. And it is a special fundraiser for our festival, and I am passing everything across to Paula McGovern. Big round of applause.
Hey, thank you. I'm just going to ask everyone to please mute your microphones if you can, because we're getting a lot of background noise there. And we would love to hear your lovely voice, but if you can, if you can mute the microphones, please, first of all, that would be amazing. Thank you. Welcome to... Welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe and to Moth and Butterfly. Just ask everyone to unmute mute their mics, please. At the moment, we're just getting a lot of people's mics coming in. A few people I'll wait a second till a few people just mute their mics. And this is a very special night. And in honor of our very special night, the heavens have opened up here in Galway in the west of Ireland. We are rocking the Casbah so hard that the sky has opened up. Thunder and lightning is beaming down. And I think, Nicole, you might need to spotlight me, replace the spotlight. We're so happy to be here. The whole purpose of us being here today is to celebrate the World Storytelling Cafe Festival. And this is a fundraiser for the festival that is happening in February of next year. And we have our regular Moth and Butterfly audience, our regular Moth and Butterfly night. And that is normally on the third Wednesday of the month, but we've bumped everything to Sunday so we can combine the two wonderful things together. And I'm just seeing a bunch of people coming into the Zoom. We normally broadcast directly to YouTube, but our Moth and Butterfly audience have gotten steered over here today as well. So if you're just coming in, please mute your microphones. I'm still seeing a lot of microphones on. And we have some incredible storytellers here for tonight. We are going to hear from all corners of Ireland, and we have the tellers that will be going to the International Storytelling Festival in Marrakech. We're super, super excited to welcome you all here today. We'll tell you a little bit more as the event goes on, and then we'll hear from one of our wonderful sponsors, our Riyadh sponsors in the middle. That's going to be such a treat to chat to them as well. So without further ado, I am going to maybe welcome our first teller up from all the way in Cork. Maria Gillen, are you in the house?
I'm in the house, sister. How's it going?
Excellent, excellent. I'm so delighted. We have so much crack when we have a bit of stories going on together.
Oh, we do.
This is lovely. It's very unusual for us because we have a room full of lovely faces that I'm seeing as well. But I'm so thrilled to be having you here today, and even more thrilled to be on a plane to Morocco with you in February.
Can't wait.
So will you just kick us off with a story first of all, and then we'll sort out some of the tech gremlins in the background, but hopefully you'll be all clear to go, darling.
Mighty hurling. Well, Céad Míle Fáilte Rót le Gachtaine, 100,000 welcomes to everybody tonight. I'm delighted to be able to tell you some stories from Cork. And this story, I was asked to create it by Sheila Arnold. So right across the air in the World Storytelling Cafe and in other storytelling venues, all the storytellers have been getting together, and it's been absolutely amazing. And one of the things that we're looking forward to when we get to Morocco is meeting all of these friends that we've made over the past months. So this one was a challenge to me from one of those friends, from Sheila Arnold. A long time ago, in the time outside time, in the great kaleidoscope of time, there lived the Tuatha Danann on the edge of the river Feel. Everything was wonderful. They were simpatico with the earth. They knew all of the creatures. They would say, hello, Madrarua, hello to the fox, hello, Bo, hello to the cow, hello, Maktira, hello to the wolf, And all of the animals, because they could speak with them at that time, would say hello back. But Rinashi, the king of the fairies, began to get a feeling over him. He began to know that a great change was coming, the change that had been foretold. He went to the river Feel and he asked on Bradan Fassa. He asked the salmon for her input. Then he went to the fields and he asked on Madra Rua. He asked the red dog or the fox for her input. He asked the crows and the eagles. He asked the things that crawled. He asked the things with 2 legs and 4 legs, with 6 legs and 8 legs, and they all had the same story to tell. The days of the Tuatha Dé Danann were waning. He could feel it in his magic that took more time to pull from the places that he pulled magic from these days. He went and he spoke to his people, and as he did, the dragon who lives under the great round stone in front of the castle of Listowel stuck out her blue snout to see what was going on. She could feel the separation beginning to happen, and she wasn't happy, for she had known Rinashi from the time that he was a boy and she was a pup. Rinashi, it's me, you see. Can we have a talk? Of course, for you, he said. Come, and I'll grant you an audience. And she told him of how she felt and that they were beginning to separate. And he said, that is the case, and choices will have to be made. If you come with us, you shall retain some of your magic, but you will go to the shadow places, to the liminal spaces. You will live in shadow, and man who walks the earth will hardly take any notice of you. She thought about this, and she sent her heart out to the other dragons of the area, for that's how they communicated. And then she said, Rinashi, we agree we'll come with thee. He was delighted, and then he told her what the cost would be. If you come with us, he said, we will shrink just as our world shrinks, and you too, if you're our companion. What does that mean? Said the dragon. Your body will elongate, he said, and your wings will grow and flow and fly out over the river Feel. But, he said, you will become much, much smaller, and those wings, they will become invisible, but they will be iridescent. Iridescent, she tried on her tongue. I like the sound of that. What does it mean, Rinashi? And he said, your wings themselves will be colourless, but across those colourless wings will dance every colour known to man. Reds and blues and greens, browns and yellows, jewel colours, earthen colours, shade, shadow and light. Every colour that you can imagine will dance across those wings. Oh, Rinashi, she said, King of the Fairies, I'd love that. And so they picked a day, the 1st of August. Lunasa is the name of that feast day now. And all the she folk, the fair folk, they followed the path down by the river Feel, following it all the way to the next field where there was a round stones, a fairy cathedral. And Rinashi, he stepped into the middle of the round stones, and he called to his people, and he sent Dríochnashi out to cross their heads, the magic of the fairies. And they felt themselves change. They felt themselves get smaller as the blades of grass around them began to appear like giant trees. And if they did, the same thing was happening to the dragons. From the huge animals that they were, they began to shrink and change and elongate. And indeed their wings grew and flew and became iridescent under the luminous moon, and all the colours promised that they would be safe as they danced across the wings of the dragonfly. And that is how dragons became dragonflies on the banks of the river Feel on that lunatic day so far away. And now, if you see a dragonfly, you may be sure that their fair folk are not far away.
Woohoo! Thank you, love. Thank you
Oh,
so
welcome, me
much.
darling.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful stuff. If you've just joined us, thanks, Maria. If you've just joined us, we would just ask people to turn off their mics when you come in. It's a setting on our Zoom, but I don't think it is on the cafe. You come in with your mic on. So if you wouldn't mind just turning off your mics when you come in, when the tellers are on. Thank you so much. We are delighted to welcome you here to this fundraiser, or Rock the Casbah, for the World Storytelling Cafe International Festival in Marrakech in February. So there are links all over the Facebook events and hopefully in the YouTube as well that'll tell you where to donate. Tonight is the Irish are coming. It's the Irish tellers who are all travelling to Marrakech, and we have hopefully gathered most, if not all of them, here tonight to tell you some stories. Moth and Butterfly is a night that tells a combination of stories. We do improvised stories, we do folk tales, and we do sort of everything else in between, personal stories as well. So we might throw in a few personal stories and a few, we'll mix it up a little bit. We had a theme for our night originally, our original Moth and Butterfly monthly night, which was Up in the Air. So we've thrown that out to the storytellers tonight to see if they'd like to be inspired by that. We're not going to hold them to it, but just to see if they're inspired. So we'll see what happens. Look for Up in the Air in the theme of the stories. I think next I am going to go over, I'm going to go up to Antrim. And Colin Irwin, are you here with us? I see your lovely face there. How are you?
I'm good, Orla. I'm good. You got home safe and sound?
I did. So I got to hang out with Colin. He's the best tour guide. We went all around. We had a picnic. I was up visiting Liz and Colin up that neck of the woods recently. And he is as good a host and a tour guide as he is a storyteller. And that's a tall order. You're very welcome tonight. I know you're probably going to another event as well after this too. What are you telling somewhere else tonight?
No, it's a wee story circle we have every Sunday night, and there's a few
Beautiful
people on. I see that go to that.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I'll hand it over to you, and I look forward to your story. Thanks, darling.
Okay. I've called this story "The Giver of Life," and it was collected in Islay in 1859, or a version of it. Long before your time or mine, there were three sisters. And one day they were washing their clothes and bathing in a stream. Well, a hooded crow, a grey crow, flew past. We call them corbies here, and it landed beside them. Well, crows are well known to be very clever birds, but even so, these young women were surprised when it spoke. It addressed the oldest sister. "Would you marry me?" "Indeed I would not," she said. "Clever you might be, but you're an ugly brute of a bird." And that was the answer she gave it. The next day they were by the stream, washing their clothes and bathing. The hooded crow flew past again. It landed by the water's edge, and this time it addressed the middle sister. "Would you marry me?" "Indeed I would not. Clever you might be, but you're an ugly brute of a bird." And that was the answer that she gave it. The next time the sisters were washing by the stream, the crow flew past again. It landed by the water's edge. This time it addressed the youngest sister. "Would you marry me?" it said. And the youngest sister said, "I would marry you, surely, for you are a clever and a handsome bird." And well, you might have guessed that this Corby crow was no ordinary crow. It was enchanted. And the Corby crow asked his new wife to be, Would you rather I was a Corby crow by day and your husband by night, or your husband by day and a Corby crow by night? I would rather you were my husband by day, she said, so that we can be married in God's daylight. And so that's what happened. The youngest sister, whose name was Aileen, which means the giver of life, married the Corby crow. By day, he was her loving, handsome husband, and everyone remarked on his jet black hair and his shock of grey. And by night, he turned into a hooded crow, and he perched at the bottom of her bed and watched over her. Well, soon after they wed, the Corby crow took his young bride to a grand house with servants and maids, and, well, time passed. 9 months, in fact, and Aileen gave birth to a beautiful little baby boy. And that night, as they slept, beautiful harp and pipe music filled that house, and everyone fell into a deep trance. When they awoke the next morning, the cradle was empty. The child was nowhere to be found. The entire house was completely heartbroken. But of course, in all these stories, time passes, as it does in life. And once again, Aileen gave birth to another beautiful little baby boy. A watch was kept that night, but the strange, beautiful harp and pipe music was heard, and everyone fell into a trance. And in the morning, the child was gone, could not be found anywhere. Everyone in that household was stricken with grief. Well, Aileen gave birth to another son. A guard was doubled in the house and round about, and Aileen's two older sisters came to help her keep watch. But the same terrible thing happened. Aileen was inconsolable at the loss of her third baby. Her husband insisted, "We must leave this place. Bring everything with you. We can never return, for if we do, we will rue the day." And as they drove along the road in a coach, Aileen remembered something. "I have left my wedding ring on the dressing table," she said. And in that instant, there was a flash of light and the smell of acrid smoke of burning hair and feathers. A pile of clothes were left in the coach, and her husband turned into a Corby crow and flew off. Aileen jumped from the coach. She ran after her husband, and when she got to the top of the hill, she could see him down in the next hollow. And when she reached the hollow, she could see him soaring up over the next hill. And so it went on all day. Aileen ran over hill and dale. As dusk fell, she came upon a cottage. She knocked at the door, exhausted. She asked for food and shelter. Well, the woman of the house brought her in. And when Aileen saw a little boy playing on the floor beside the fire, her heart ached for the loss of her own sons, and she began to weep. The woman of the house laid her down to sleep. But when morning came, she woke with a start. She was out the door and away over hill and dale. When she got to the top of a high hill, she could see the Corby crow down in the hollow. When she got to the hollow, she could see the Corby crow up over the next hill. And so it went on all day. And by nightfall, she was exhausted. She came to another cottage. She knocked on the door and asked for food and shelter. Well, the woman of the house brought her in. And when she saw a beautiful little baby boy lying in his cradle, her heart ached for the loss of her own sons, and she wept. Well, the woman of the house laid her down to rest, but at dawn she awoke, and without so much as a "by your leave," she was out that door and away. Over hill and dale she ran after Corby crows, hunted them high up and low down, but it was the same as the days before. And that evening she was dropping off her feet. She came upon another cottage. She knocked at the door. She asked for food and shelter. And when the woman brought her in, and when Aileen saw a little newborn baby at that woman's breast, she broke down and wept. And she told the woman her whole story. Well, the woman listened. And when she had finished, she warned her, that night you must not sleep. Your husband may come to you in the night, and it may be your only chance to get him back. But Aileen was exhausted. She could not keep her eyes open. She fell into a deep, deep sleep. And as she slept, she dreamt that her husband came to her in the form of the Corby crow. He had something shining in his beak. It was her wedding ring. He slipped the wedding ring onto her finger. Well, she grabbed for the bird, but she could not hold it, and it flew off. And all she was left was one black feather in her hand. And when she awoke in the morning, of course, the ring was on her finger, and she had a black feather in her hand. She wept and wept. I have lost my husband. I will never have the chance to get him back again. All is not lost, said the woman. If you want your husband back, you must travel through forests strewn with needle-sharp pines. You will have to climb mountains of ice and jagged rocks. You will have to cross burning desert sands. To do this, you will need a pair of shoes shod with iron, which you must make yourself. Do not forget to make a pair for your husband if you wished to have him back again. And so Aileen cut off her hair. She dressed as a man, and she served an apprenticeship with a blacksmith for 7 years. And she learned how to heat the iron in the forge. She learned to use a hammer and strike that iron on the anvil with unfeeling truth and send sparks sliding across the floor. After 7 years, she made herself a pair of shoes shod with iron and another pair for her husband. She went through forests strewn with needle-sharp pines and climbed mountains of ice and jagged rock and crossed deserts of burning sand. And eventually she came to a town. Well, there was a great buzz of excitement all over the town. What is happening? Said Aileen. What is happening? Only the biggest wedding we have ever had. The richest nobleman hereabouts. His daughter is getting married. But to who? No one seemed to know. Well, when Aileen heard about the groom and his jet black hair with a shock of grey, she knew it was her husband. She contrived to get an invitation to the wedding, but she could not. Eventually, she got work as a maid serving ale and wine to the wedding guests. She came up behind her husband sitting at the top table. She spoke to him, but he did not even seem to hear her or recognize her. She poured out his wine, but there was not the slightest flicker of recognition. And then Aileen served him a bowl of broth. In it, she placed the wedding ring and the black feather. At the first spoonful, he took the wedding ring into his mouth. The second spoonful, he took the black feather. And as the priest stood up to make the match, Aileen's husband said, "Wait, who has put these things in my broth?" And Aileen came forward and said, "It was I, your wife, the mother of your 3 children." Well, the spell was broken and there was a great gasp. Aileen took her husband by the hand. They ran for their lives through forests of needle-sharp pines, up over mountains of jagged rocks and ice, across deserts of burning sand in their iron-shod shoes. They came across the cottages that Aileen had stayed in. And each night, in each cottage, the women of the house gave them back their child, one by one. And even though many years had passed, the children were still, one was a little toddler, one was a babe in arms, and one was a newborn. Well, Aileen and her husband went back to their grand house with the servants and the maids. And as far as I know, they lived happily ever after. But it is said that Aileen's husband could never look at a Corby crew without a pang of regret that he would never fly again.
Oh, beautiful, Colin. Beautiful, beautiful. I would be remiss to say I got in trouble in the chat already for not saying that you're also incredibly, as many of us know, a wonderful singer. I hadn't forgotten. I witnessed that. We got to sing together in Liz's up in Ballyame, and it really was a special treat. So I can't wait to hear what stories you're bringing to Marrakech as well. Thanks a million, Colin. You're a star. I love that. So Moth and Butterfly, in our regular nights, we have personal stories and we have improvisational stories as well. And a very good friend of mine is over at this. Well, actually, she's not. She's in Galway tonight. I'm telling a lie, but normally lives on the Aran Islands and the west coast of Ireland. There's a few Aran Islands off our coast, but these are the ones off Galway. So I'd like to bring Jackie Rowntree up. Jackie, are you in the house?
I am in the house. Can you hear me?
I can indeed, darling. You're very, very welcome. And Nicole's going to spotlight you for everyone as well. Jackie has an incredible house over in Inishmore, and sometimes we have patchy Wi-Fi, but it's always worth the patchy Wi-Fi to get the stories. And I think I said earlier to people there was a massive storm coming in over Galway, but you got that a couple of nights ago, didn't you, in Inishmore?
Oh yeah, it was dramatic. It was brilliant. It was
brilliant.
The sea turned black and wavy and brilliant, and it's been so calm and warm. It's been like a tropical island over there. So I'm in Galway for tonight for the last day or two, but I'll go back there tomorrow. So
lovely. And you're going to tell a true story, yeah? A Moth story.
I'm going to tell a true story of Moth, and it's based on the island. So if anybody doesn't know the Aran Islands, it's there are 3 islands based, just planted right out in the Atlantic, about 23 miles from the Galway coast in Galway Bay. And you probably heard of Aran sweaters, and a lot of people would say, how come all these sweaters are here when there's no sheep? Because there are no sheep on the Aran Islands. So yeah, but I think they did originally knit these sweaters. But my story is a true story about a very mad incident that happened, one of the many mad incidents that happened at the time when I first went to the island, and my little boy was just a little baby. So we're talking about the early 90s, and the island was like a Celtic Disneyland. There was people from all over living there. There was lots of hippies, lots of musicians could come there and sing for their supper and get rent for 20 pounds a week in a little cottage or a caravan, or even 20 quid a month probably. But you could live for very little and very happily out there. So there was a lot of hippies with woolly jumpers and musical instruments wandering around, and there was always sessions. And there was a saying in those times that said, like the early 90s in the Aran Islands was a great place to live because you got ceol, which is music, fiol, which is meat, the dole, which is the social welfare, and your whole. So yeah, it wasn't your whole week's wages either. But anyway, yeah, so that was the kind of life that was there. At the time, we lived in a small cottage when we first went to the island, and it was a very open house. It was in the village of Killaney, which was once the ground of Castlearkin, Cromwellian soldiers. They say the guilds are members of the Cromwellian soldiers because that guild means servants. Anyway, our landlady, who was Mary Ann, who lived next door to us, had a son, Bertie, who was a fisherman and would regularly hide from his mammy, even though he was like in his mid-20s, and come into us to drink with his cans and his whiskey and sit by our fire. So at the time, my sister had come to the island to work in the local hotel as a chef, and she was about 18 and she was single. So all the fellas were mad about her. I was spoken for. I had a baby in one arm and a belly with another one. And so I wasn't doing much partying at the time. But I was waitressing. So I came home one night and there's Bertie hiding from his mammy drunk at our fire. And him and my husband, who's now deceased, were sitting at the fire, and then another character turned up, and that was the local plumber. Now, Terry is a character. He's a plumber on the island. He's originally from Dublin, and he has polio, so he goes around on 2 crutches. and he loves the old bit of drink. He loves the whiskey and the crack. So the two of them found themselves at our fire this one night, and my husband, who'd had a good belly full of drink, decided to go to bed because he was the captain of the ferry. So off he went to bed. So this conversation started about who loved my sister most. So Bertie would say, no, I love her more than you, Terry. No, she'd have me before she had you. I'm younger than you. And Terry said, well, I've more money than you. So I've more wisdom of life than you. And Bertie'd say, well, I have a fishing boat and I have loads of fish, and don't I give her fish all the time? So the conversation went on about who deserved the hand of my sister, who wasn't actually interested in men at all. But anyway, she was getting great crack out of that, as I was, but decided that as she was waking early in the morning, she would have to go to bed. So her bedroom was off the fire. It was a small cottage, and it was off the fireplace in the sitting room. So off she went to bed. Next of all, one of them went out to the loo. I think it was Bertie, and Terry hobbled in to sit with Mags and declare his undying love and try to jump into her bed. So Mags was going, no, Terry, go away. I'm going to sleep. I'm not interested in you. No, Terry, no, get out. And he's going, oh, but Mags, I love you. You're great. We'd be a great couple together. We'd live happily ever after. And I'd look after you with all my plumbing jobs, and you would never have to work again. And next of all, Bertie comes in to the room as well. And he goes, don't mind that fool. I will give you fish. This went on. I will give you a house. This house could be your house if only you'd marry me. But the two of them started fighting over it. And then they started hitting each other. So Terry is trying to beat Bertie, the fisherman, with his crutches, slamming them at each other, trying to beat him up. And Max said, oh my God, and it was all kind of done in jest, but it was getting a little bit heavy. It was getting a little bit serious. So I was like, oh, come on, lads, break it up. And my child is in my arm, who'd been woken up. But it was the early 90s now, and it was kind of very liberal and free for all. And anyway, tried to break them up, couldn't break them up. They were both trying to get into the bed beside her, and she wasn't having either of it. So I went into my husband and I said, Sean, I said, they're killing each other out there. You better come out. So next of all, Sean woke him up, got out of the bed, threw the covers off him, and 2 seconds flat, he's standing at the doorway of the bedroom, and he's very English, and he's saying, right, gentlemen, enough of this frivolity, out. And they both look at him because he hasn't got a stitch of clothes on him, because he just ran out of the bed and he stand there. And the two looked at each other up and down, and without another word, Bertie threw Terry up in the air, threw him over his shoulder like a sack of spuds, and the two of them marched off into the night. And there was no more talk of Mary and Mags again. So that's my Mott story. True story.
Thank you, Jackie. Never a dull moment on Inishmore, can I tell you that? Never a dull moment. Thanks so much. We're gonna have a chat in a couple of moments with our lovely sponsor, our Riyadh sponsor, but we'll have one more storyteller, and this is a very special man to me, who I first met, even though we're both from Ireland. We met in the north of Finland at a festival. So Eamon Keenan, are you in the house? I am delighted to see you, and sorry I missed you last week. How are you, Eamon? You're still, yeah, I have you. There's your lovely voice. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I was loving the stories. Absolutely,
yeah, me too,
wonderful,
me too.
Wonderful. Yeah. So the story I want to tell is, I listened to, or I read about the idea of going up and away, and I had to think about it. And yesterday I was able to do a storytelling for the first time in front of a live audience for a long, long time. And it was a lovely evening. And I had a conversation with a couple of young Spanish ladies who were there, and we got talking about Spain, and it brought back a lot of memories for me. And so I wrote a story today about it. So I'm going to tell it. I remember that day well. The day I looked down into the abyss, and a creature of the abyss called out to my mind, jump. It was February 2009, a dark time for me, February. My mother had died a few months before, after fading and failing for some time. And now my father was on his last part of life's journey. I needed a bit of time to prepare myself for the following months because I knew it would be so difficult. So I returned for a week to Andalusia to walk the hills around the town of Alora and to rejoice in the healing sun. The accommodation I knew and loved, and as usual, I met others staying at the hotel who were friendly and good company. Having no car, they suggested I join them the next day on a trip to the park, the national park at Ardelas, and to see the ruined Camino del Rey and the El Charro Gorge and the lakes. We went to the Ardelas and we walked up the hilly slopes behind the El Charro Gorge, passing eucalyptus and cypress and almond and olive trees. Wild goats at a safe distance eyed us briefly with nothing but disdain as they chewed and chewed. Then we came to the edge of the gorge to look down on the 400-meter cliffs and the valley of the Guadalhorce River. I did not share the relaxed enthusiasm of my companions, for I don't like heights, where they sat comfortably next to the edge of the abyss. But I lay on my back, staring at the blue cloudless sky, enjoying the warmth and the silence. And there, sailing high in the warm air currents, were huge birds, vultures, the largest bird in Europe, gliding on their 10-feet wingspans. Some of them dropped down to fly past us, so I crawled a little nearer to the edge of the cliffs to look down, down, down into the abyss. And as I looked ahead, raising my head and looking around, gliding past me from my left, a huge vulture with the ferocious features and glistening golden eyes. It flew past in a matter of seconds and only a matter of a few yards away from me. And then it turned its head sharply, glaring as if to say, "Jump, I'm hungry, little man." For one moment I thought, what would it be like to fly? To fly as did Icarus or the vulture? How would it feel to fall down through the sky? Not up, up and away, but down, down to the end. But the moment passed. I smiled, delighted to have been at least observed by the great bird. But no, I would not be its lunch today. I had a photograph taken of me at the entrance to the gorge. I was so relaxed and happy. It was a joyful day. And before we returned to Alora, we had a cold beer in a bar overlooking a huge man-made lake with a fountain of water stretching high into the sky. Returning to the hotel, there was a message. I had to return home immediately. My father's time in this world was ended. The next day, I flew up and away in that airplane. And flying away sometimes up into the sky is not always a joyful experience.
Oh, amen. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Maria just said something that I would echo. It's just the sound of your voice is it's a tonic, really is a tonic.
Thank
We
you.
won't add gin to it yet. We'll wait till we get to the next time we see each other. Thank you so much. If you've just come in, I would ask everyone, I see a few people have just unmuted their mics. Please mute your microphones in case the tellers are mid-story. We usually have it as an auto thing, but I think it's just people are coming in with the mics on. Thank you so much. I know I mentioned earlier about the World Storytelling Cafe and the festival, and we are very privileged to have with us tonight one of our sponsors for the World Storytelling Cafe Festival in Morocco, and that is Anya Marsland. She's the owner of one of the riads. Anya, can you hear me there? Are you in the house?
No, I can hear you, but can you hear me?
We can hear you, and I can actually see you. I'm seeing snippets of you, which is brilliant. Yay!
Oh, God.
You're so welcome. Thank you for joining in our lovely storytelling event today. And you are the proprietor of one of the just mind-blowingly beautiful riads in Marrakech. And I think what we might do is we might maybe ask you to tell us a little bit about your journey, what took you to Morocco. And Nicole can actually bring up some photographs to help illustrate that as well. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I am actually, I should say, even though I speak English.
You are actually Irish. Yes.
Yes, I just speak English. Don't blame me.
And I think you said we were chatting about Dublin and the street your dad grew up on, which is a beautiful part of Georgian Dublin as well. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Art, though, and the whole family cemetery 1,000 years. So please come with me on my journey. So brilliant. I used to work in the film industry.
Right.
I was quite successful. That's me. So this is me winning an Emmy. As I say, I was quite successful. I used to work for Warner Brothers on the technical side of making movies, as my telephone tells you. About 2008, I gave up on that. It was just too stressful. And I started to get contract work in Morocco. So I'll be going down to the film studios in Guadazat, which I really recommend you go to if you have a spare day. Picking up this, and then I would get work as a photographer, as a still photographer. I trained as a cinematographer with Kodak. So this is one of my photographs for the Wall Street Journal. And it was a series about food in fairs. So this guy is actually weighing live chickens. You buy them live, he cuts their throat. It's very fresh, but not for vegetarians. I know you're all vegetarians.
Not all of us. That's all right.
So I got quite a bit of work in Morocco. I also worked with some artists. Our Riyadh manager is an artist. So I did a lot of content for him, taking photographs, helping them with their publicity. And lo and behold, somebody said, well, you need to buy a flat because you're here so often. And well, you know how it goes. So I looked at flats and they're all very small. And then eventually somebody said, no, don't buy a flat, buy a riad. You've lived in hotels all your life. You know about hospitality. You know what standards are. And you'll really enjoy it in Marrakech owning a riad. I think there's other riad owners on this chat.
Brilliant.
So we ended up walking around and I found the riad that I own now, which is huge. It's one house and then it has a new house at the back. So the idea was that we could run the riad and I would live at the back of the house. I could close off from the clients.
Brilliant. And we just have a question there. Just somebody's popping up in the chat. For people who don't know what a riad is, could you just explain the word?
Sure. A riad is the Arabic word for a house with a garden. A dar is an Arabic word for just a house. So riad has become synonymous with guest houses. Beautiful. So when you see riad and a name, it normally means it's a guest house. So some of these guest houses can be €300 a night. They're fabulous. They're old palaces. Mine was built approximately 200 years ago for a silk merchant. So if that wasn't fabulous enough, he ran out of money, they left, and it was turned into what we call a fondouk. And a fondouk is a caravansier. where you take your animals and you go from Marrakech to the desert, you go from Marrakech to Tangier to Europe with your spices and everything. So if you come to my riad, where this swimming pool is in the picture is actually where the camels used to sleep.
Wow.
So all the back of this picture that you probably can't see was in fact a huge door which the travelers would open, let their camels in. They would sleep in the area where the swimming pool is, and then they'd tie up their mules and their donkeys, and they would sleep in the rooms upstairs.
Wow.
So whilst I don't have a fabulous palace history, I do quite an interesting history of what my riad was used for, and we describe it as authentic. I also have it furnished in an authentic Moroccan style. As you can see, I've won an award. I won an award for being one of the top % of riads in Marrakech. It was voted by TripAdvisor.
Brilliant. And TripAdvisor can be ruthless, so that's a well-deserved award. I've looked at the website, which we'll encourage people to go to as well. Yeah. And so, it's just stunning place.
So due to technical problems today, as you can see, I'm on my iPhone, we haven't been able to upload all my gallery of photographs of the riad. So we invite you to look at my website, which I think we can type in the address. So this is inside my riad. This is all the authentic 200-year-old doors. These Beautiful. Doors are like 6 foot high.
These are incredible. And you can thank your web developer for making a very secure site, so you can't nick your photographs from your website. That's what was going on. So thanks to Nicole for sharing these as well. I just have to say they're so stunning. They're so stunning.
Thank you, Mike, for the web address.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike.
So this is myself and our manager, Yassine, who's an artist. He's quite well known in Morocco. He's been at quite a few biennials. So you can see our riad has a really kind of arty, creative vibe. We're noted for our inability to behave like adults. Must be the Irish side.
Brilliant. Blame us. That's fine. We're all here today.
Well, we all know how it is, don't we? So I also won another award for I think it's at the 11th, I can't read it, the 11th most romantic riad in Dublin, in Marrakech.
And that's definitely a word that when you look at these pictures and you go to the website and you sort of walk through the room, it's incredibly evocative, and incredibly romantic is a perfect word for it. Because, you know, I think when we hear guest houses or B&Bs in our mind, we all have a very different image of what this is. So the fact that it's a different word really serves it as well. Riad, for me now, will always have this plush reds and just this warmth to it. Yeah.
I've tried to furnish it in European idea of 1001 Nights in Morocco. So having said that, everything in the riad is made locally by artisans.
Beautiful. And as well as obviously doing, you know, the bed and breakfast, the guest house thing, you host dinners for people as well, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some photographs on this reel, but I don't know if we're going to find them tonight. Yeah, I generally serve oh yeah, this is the Irish Mai Tai champion and his friend.
You'll have to give us more background to that. What's that about?
He is genuinely Irish Mai Tai. This is his friend. And as you can see, I'm using my photographic skills to encourage them to dress up and have a crack, as you do.
Brilliant.
What our riad is about. We like to give 5-star service, but at the same time, we're not adverse to having a bit of fun with the guests.
Brilliant. So just to give people a bit of background, if you don't know, in the festival, we have wonderful riad sponsors who are each hosting a storyteller or 2 storytellers in their riad, but there are still rooms available to book in Anya's and other riads, and we would adore if we had a gang of troublemakers of the finest kind to be in the riads with us. And I just was blown away when I looked at Anya's website, and it's very reasonable to stay, and the festival's on for a little bit over a week, but you know, you can come for 3 or 4 days, I assume, Anya, as well. You know, there's no limit. People could just book for a couple of nights, couldn't they?
Yeah, our minimum is 2 nights during the festival.
Exactly, 2 nights. So you could come for 3 or 4 nights as a little mini break as well. That's brilliant. This might be a good point to bring in Mike, just to chat a little bit more about the festival as well. Mike, are you in the house there somewhere? Mike Woods.
Hi, Owen.
How are you?
I'm great. Hi, everybody.
Thanks for the green. We appreciate it. And Anya.
Thank you so much. It's just great to have the, this is our second collaboration between Moth and Butterfly and World Storytelling Cafe. So we're really, really grateful for the invitation to be with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, we're so looking forward to the festival. We're going to have more than 30 storytellers from around the world. Curated by John Rowe, who's well known, I think, to many of you. But that's only half the story, because in Marrakech we've got there's of course great deal of excitement in the storytelling community, but in parallel we're going to have 30 beautiful guest houses, and there's just as much excitement over there about the magic that we're trying to sort of weave together. And I just want to emphasize that, you know, these are quite small houses. You're looking at 5 or 6 bedrooms. It's very personal. Each is renovated by, you know, through the sort of passion, enthusiasm, commitment of an owner. And you know, I think the riad we've just seen, you saw the beautiful dipping pool. What we didn't see was a wonderful roof terrace. Dar Diokoum has one of the best roof terraces in Marrakech, with wonderful sort of sunset views over the town. And service is a very personal thing, but you know, these are small, you know, very intimate places where looking after guests exceptionally well is very much in the DNA. And I think another thing I'd like to mention about Dar Diokoum also is I know they do have a very strong tradition of American guests staying. So that's something to. I don't know if we've got any Americans watching. Perhaps we have. We do.
There's a conversation going on about the word crack in the chat as you're speaking, so we should explain that later.
Yeah, brilliant. So the festival is going to be taking place in the riads. There's going to be storytelling in the riads as well as in cafes and museums and in the square and other venues. And we really we're hugely grateful to our riad partners and sponsors, as we are to our storytelling partners. Just in terms of giving you a feel for the cost of staying in the riad, I'm going to speak in US dollars as the common currency today. A room in a riad is going to cost between $100 and $200 US a night. So, you know, I think if we think in terms of per person, if you were looking at a twin room or a couple, you're looking at $50 to $100 US per night. That includes breakfast. And of course, it also you're going to be in the festival. There will be at least one storyteller in your riad, and you're really immersing yourself. Not only immersing yourself in the ancient Medina of Marrakech and its history, but immersing yourself in our festival. So, you know, we're really excited about this. We're excited about the synergy of putting the storytellers and the riads together. And we really hope that this will be the first of a series of festivals, I have to say. You know, I think we're, yeah, that's kind of where we are. Any questions for me, Ola? Does that make sense?
And there's some people asking about currency conversion, but I think there's so many nationalities watching that we can just pop it into a currency converter. I think we said did you say about 50 to 100 euros? Was that in euros anyway? Something like that? Was that right? Yeah.
Well, so what I said is that a room is between 100 and 200. Bearing in mind here, you know, I'm talking about 20 different houses, and each of these houses is unique. They're individual. So they'll have 5 or 6 rooms, and each room will have its own price. So this is not, you're not going to a chain hotel with a cookie cutter product. It's very, very personal. And, you know, do browse the houses, and, you know, it's about finding what is a fit for you. But I wanted to give you a feel for what the cost of staying in one of the riads will be. And a room will cost between 100 and 200 US dollars.
Grand.
Okay? So on a per person basis, on the basis that most people will be either in a couple or will be taking a twin room or whatever, that's between 50 and 100 US dollars per night.
Yeah, we just had a couple of people. I was just asking about the conversion. That was helpful. Yeah, and there's a couple of questions there's a couple of questions coming in. Sorry, Mike, about cost of living in Marrakech, like for entertainment and food and stuff. What's that like? People are asking.
Okay, so I'd say that there's a huge variety there, because we have top European restaurants where you'd be paying Dublin prices, or London prices or whatever, and that sort of all the way up to fine dining. And we also have street food that you could live off for literally, you could live off for very, very little. I think there will be, and so that makes it very difficult to give an indication. Actually, I mean, you could certainly live very comfortably in Marrakech on a modest amount of money, but equally, if you go to the, and particularly if you drink, actually, if you get, bars and alcohol are basically European prices, and there's more variety in. Would you like to add anything there, Anya? Am I? Is that a fair comment?
I'd say drink is more expensive than Europe.
Yeah, we'll survive that one. we can survive for a week. There's some more people coming into the room now. People are asking questions like, will it be vegetarian friendly? I mean, I have friends who go to Morocco every year, and they have lovely vegetarian food and lovely vegetarian experiences. Other friends of mine say they find it a little bit more difficult to be vegetarian there. So I think, my friends are very, very happy with the beautiful fresh veggies and fruit and everything that they get there. So it's a city. It's a city, right? Is that fair to say, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. Our daughter is vegan, and she is able to eat well in Marrakech. There isn't a lot of meat in the locals' day-to-day diet. I think for reasons of expense as much as anything else, as would have been the case, I guess, here in Europe not that long ago. So there are wonderful fresh vegetables and fruits in the markets, and there are plenty of traditional dishes that make use of them.
Brilliant.
I think that the issue is more that you tend to get served sort of special occasion food, because you're treated as a royal guest and serve special occasion food. So the trick is dialing into that sort of those traditional dishes, really.
Brilliant. Just another question there as well. Somebody's asking about dress code if you're coming to the festival, and I presume they mean in terms of modesty and stuff. I didn't even think of dress code.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Maybe Anya or yourself could answer that.
Well, I would say that please bear in mind that it's a Muslim country. When I live there, when I go out, I always wear long sleeves and trousers, and I'm never bothered. For gentlemen, please wear what you like. I don't know that it's going to be boiling hot in February. It's going to be lovely and cool, perhaps a light shirt and a little anorak or something for the evening in case there's a breeze. But you don't need to dress up unless you're going to one of the expensive French restaurants.
Okay,
it's very
brilliant. Good. Brilliant. Yeah. So just something cool and casual and long and respectable enough. We won't wear the tutus going down the road. That's brilliant. Mike, is there anything else you want to say before we go back to the stories? I'm just so honored to have Anya and yourself just chatting about it, because I'm just getting all excited just hearing even the questions about things. I'm getting very sparked by it.
The vegetarians among you, I'm sure this is the same as for Mike. We buy all our vegetables that morning in the market from the local people. We don't buy anything from supermarkets. So whenever you buy any food in the Riyadh, you know that we're supporting the local populace. And it's the same with the meat. We actually buy our meat from a French supermarket because of the quality. You've seen the chickens. You don't need to go there. But generally, if you know what you want in the morning, all the Riyadh will be able to go out, source your food and have it for you for dinner. The cost is around probably €15. I don't know what Mike charges, 15 to 20 euros for a 3-course dinner.
Great.
And you know that you won't be sick. You know you're going to enjoy it. You've had some input into what you're going to be served. You choose from our menu. We aim to please. After all, it is a service industry. So please speak up, tell us what you'd like, and we'll try and organise it for you.
And there's a list of all the Riyadhs that will be part of the festival up on the World Storytelling Cafe website as well. And I will be at the best one. I'm allowed to say that. I'm only joking. Anya's here, so I'll be. Yeah. we'll all have our favorites coming away. So we just really encourage everyone, if you're coming to the festival, start booking now, because it's also a busy time there too. So you just want to make sure that you get into a riad with your favorite storytellers as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Anya. We really appreciate you taking
It's
the
my
time.
pleasure. I've really enjoyed the stories.
Brilliant. We'll have a few more. We're not done yet. Thanks a million, Mike. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you again.
Brilliant. So we have a few more tellers before we finish the night. Again, I'm going to repost again this is a fundraiser for the festival in Marrakech. And to our regular Moth and Butterfly audience who normally join us, we have just bumped our night in so we can facilitate that fundraising. So if you're going to donate to our night like you normally do, please donate it instead to tonight to the festival fundraiser. And thank you so much for all the tellers for taking their time to be part of this fundraiser too. As I said earlier, our night is a combination of personal stories, improvised stories, and folk tales. So I'm going to ask our own Nicole Blue, who is also a fantastic singer-songwriter. Nicole, are you in the house?
I am in the house. I'm currently trying to find myself.
That's what we all say at the end of the day. I'm trying to find myself. Nicole is also doing tech in the background as well, scrambling around. Thank you so much. Will you tell people why you are in sunglasses? It's not just because you're a rock star,
I'm actually
right?
going to change now. I will tell. This is an interesting fact about myself. I have photophobia, which sounds like fear of light, but it means that my eyes don't focus properly in bright light or even in any light, and I get really bad vertigo and quite bad migraines, and I was suffering today. But just for the brief story I'm about to tell, I will put regular non-sunglasses on and go back later. But yeah, that's why
Brilliant.
I wear sunglasses.
We are sacrificing for our art here and for the storytellers. And again, I just want to remind people that there'd be no stories without you listeners. So thank you to everyone in the Zoom room for coming in and taking the time to listen. We really appreciate it, whether you're from the World Storytelling Cafe audiences or our Moth and Butterfly audiences. And you can find out more about Moth and Butterfly on our website as well. I'll put that up in a little bit in the chat. And we'll hope you'll come to our regular events as well. There's so many new friends and old friends that I've met through storytelling during the lockdowns online. And it's so lovely to see the worlds meet. So Nicole, I am going to hand over to you and then off you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I am going to tell my story now. So I'm sorry, I'm teching at the same time. It's always a bit interesting, but I'm going to tell a moth story, a true story about myself. Many of you would know me, especially many people here in Galway would know me chiefly and firstly as a performer. And most of my performance is done through busking. And busking, if you don't know what it is performing on the street. I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, and I make my entire living from performance, from my art, and the majority of it from singing on the street, from busking. But what a lot of people don't know is that this was not always the case. I went to college for music and performance in Seattle, Washington, in the States. And when I got out of college, like many other artists, I opted, out of necessity, for security's sake, to get a day job, as they say, in quotes. And like many of my fellow Seattle artists, I got a job in coffee. I worked as a barista for many, many years. Got a job with Starbucks, of course. Where else would you work in Seattle? And I was good at it. I was really good at it. I got several pay raises and several promotions, and after not that long of a time, I was promoted to manager. and getting a very good wage, a very good salary, 401k, very good health insurance paid for by the company, including dental and optical. And I had sick pay and vacation days and everything that everybody says you should work for. And it was a really good job. And I began to get miserable. Not just miserable, but resentful. I begin to get angry. Angry at the job, angry at the customers, angry at the company, angry at my employees, angry at my bosses, angry. Very, very angry. I woke up every morning and was miserable. I hated it. And perhaps not surprisingly, along with my seething, constant anger, I began to get sick. And I got sicker, and the doctors didn't know what was wrong, and I got sicker and sicker until eventually I couldn't work. And I had to take a leave of absence. And my bosses were very understanding and kind, and they said, your job will be waiting for you when you are well again, because I was a really good employee. I was very good. And I said, thank you very much. And I took the time off, and I got sicker and had to be hospitalized, and then I had to have surgery. And all of this was a huge disruption in my life. Like everything suddenly stopped, everything suddenly changed, everything was up in the air. I had no idea what was going to happen. It was a very scary, scary time. I went from being angry to being frightened. And then slowly, after the surgery, I was at home and I slowly began to recover. And some sort of equilibrium began again. And I slowly realized that in no way, shape, or form could I go back to working for Starbucks. And on top of that, I realized that I couldn't go back to any kind of day job or working for someone else, because when I was working for someone else, I wasn't doing my art. I had less and less time for my art, and in my art was where my heart was. And I felt like that work was, any work outside of it was actually slowly killing me. And so I called up my boss and I said, I quit. I said the words, I quit. And my boss said, are you sure? And I said, I am absolutely sure. And they said, well, we're sorry to see you go. And I said, thank you. But secretly I was going, I am not sorry any little bit. I cashed in my 401k to kind of buy me some time. And then I sat there wondering what in the world I was going to do next. Because I had nothing. I had no job, no security. And in most of the world, but especially in America, that is a very, very bad thing. It's a very, very bad place to be. It's held to be that way anyway. But I felt this sort of growing, floating sort of freedom. And as I recovered some more and was slowly running out of money from my 401k, I remembered that I had friends and I'd seen some people playing music on the street. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it with all my heart, with everything I have in me. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to grab my guitar, and I'm going to make what money I can with my art. So I grabbed my guitar, headed down to the Pike Place Market in Seattle, and I went for it. And I've never looked back. I made some wonderful friends, wonderful community that are still around me today. I have discovered things about myself and my art that I would not have known, like busking is the best way in the world to learn how to be a really good performance artist, to learn how to be really good at your art, and to learn how to read a crowd and interact with people. And not only that, but I have grown in my art forms. I am now, yes, a musician, a singer, and a songwriter, but I'm also a writer. I also perform and do technical lights and sound for improv theatre and for storytelling theatre. And, as you may have noticed, I tell the odd story or two as well. All of it, my art, all of it bringing me joy, all of it entirely everything of my living. I do not have a quote unquote day job or a regular job, which means I don't have any security. I have no idea what is going to happen or how much or how little money I'm going to make when I step out of that door in the morning. But I can tell you this, every day when I step out that door to earn my living, to literally sing for my supper, even though everything is up in the air on a regular basis, it is up in the air where I can breathe. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful, Nicole. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There was a great discussion going on in the background about busking in the chat, and I was like, don't say too much, it might be a punchline, because it's very contentious here at the moment. There's some bylaws in about busking and street performance, and I think in many places in the world those laws are kind of changing. But for me, walking by a street performer or a busker, it's just the freest art form. It's, you know, you have to invite people to listen. You know, you can just walk by. It's not like you're trapped in a theater and you have to stay till the end of the play, even if you don't like it. It'd be rude to get up. You can just walk by. So that was a beautiful story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you, darling. I would just now like to invite a wonderful woman up. I was just up visiting her, and I can just say, and she knows this, I've said it to her before, her company is complete balm for the soul when I most needed it. Liz, are you in the house? Liz Weir, will you come
I'm indeed. Thank you very much, Orla.
You're so welcome. Delighted you've been on Moth and Butterfly before, and you can come on anytime. And when we're in real life, you know, the kettle is always on for you. So Liz has an amazing space up in North Antrim called Ballyeamon Barn, which is, for anybody who's been there, it's one of the very, very special places, not only in Ireland but in the world. But maybe could you tell us a little bit about the barn?
Yeah, I was interested to listen to Anya because I wanted to create space where people interested in storytelling could come and stay and go to workshops. And so I like to have that personal touch to my guests who come and stay here. I have private accommodation apartment, and I've got also dorm accommodation for workshop participants. But anyway, it's not a PR job for me, Orla. So I just want to say how much we're all looking forward to going to Marrakech. And when you said to me about up in the air, I thought, oh dear, I have to reveal something. So I'm going to tell you a very short personal story and also one of my favorite folk tales. Does that sound okay for Moth and Butterfly? I thought I would hit both. Yeah. Well, here's the thing that probably, I don't know if any of you know this about me. I absolutely hate flying. As a storyteller for, I think, 48 years, I've told in 18 different countries, in 29 states, the United States, and that has involved a lot of flying. But I hate it because, as many of you know, I'm a total control freak. And so when I'm driving my car, even though that's the most dangerous thing I do, I'm sort of in control, even though we know I'm not. But when I'm up there in a jumbo jet, very little control. So I want to tell you a very short story, but it's a moving story, and it ties in with something Eamon was talking about as well. So every year for about, 14 years, I would speak at the Conference on World Affairs in Boulder, Colorado. Every night they have a dinner, and on Friday night is the big night. You have a blast, you have a celebration, and we're all housed with a bit like, we're not in Riyadh's, but we're in people's houses. So I came back at a fairly reasonable time. I think it was 11:45 or something at night. My daughter, who was then, what age was she? 28 or something like that. She was not home. But I switch on my phone and I got this message from my brother to say, my mother has had a stroke. Come home. So I got straight on, went to my daughter's room, she wasn't home, straight on to the airline, booked the last 2 seats on the first available flight, first thing in the morning. We had to leave the place at 5 a.m. And I threw my clothes into a case, threw my daughter's clothes into her case, whether she liked it or not. And as she came parading up the driveway with her shoes held in her hand at 2:30 in the morning, I never saw a girl sober up quicker. And 2 hours later, we were in a cab. We were on our way to Denver Airport, where the film critic Roger Ebert was so kind to us and brought us to in the Eagle Lounge in Chicago. And we headed on the last 2 seats on the Aer Lingus overnight flight from Chicago to Dublin. I was stressed out of my head. I dozed off, believe it or not, because I was just so tired. And I woke up to see a flight attendant running. You don't see them running. And then I smelled a burning smell. Now, for somebody who's freaked out about flying and has watched Airplane and all these movies, I thought, this is bad. So they announced that we have a problem, and yes, we're turning back. We're over the Atlantic, but we have to turn it back and have an emergency landing. And I'm going, excuse me, you don't understand. You see, my mother has had a stroke in Ireland, and they said, look, madam, there's 250 people in this plane. You know, no harm to you, but your mother is at the height of our concern. They didn't say it like that, but that was. So we had an emergency landing in a place called Goose Bay, Labrador. Any of you who know about 9/11 know that Goose Bay was the place, it's the last turning back point when you cross the Atlantic. We landed in Goose Bay. So it was in the middle of the night. It was Easter weekend. There were 250 people trying to get off a plane to go on a 30-seater bus. I was checking with my daughter today. It took 3 hours to deplane us. You can imagine how stressed I was. They take you to this Air Force base where the beds are made up. Be aware of this, people. The beds are made up waiting for you. In any eventuality, there will be a bed for you. We land there. There is no mobile phone signal, so you're completely cut off. Not much sleep that night. Next day, we're brought into an aircraft hangar for a breakfast, and you're given one phone call. And it was on that phone call in a hangar full of 300 odd people that I realized my mother had died. And my daughter and I both went into banshee mode, like howling the place down. But still, there was no going home. So the bottom line was we were stuck there for 22 hours, waiting for a replacement Aer Lingus flight to come in to land to replace the part. Finally, we're in shock. We get on the plane. The flight attendants, by the way, who've been stuck there all Easter weekend, leaving their children, their husbands, they were all saying, oh, my husband's going to go mad over Easter. There was nothing to be done. On the flight, we sit in the 2 back seats, you know, those seats that you can't even recline. And this flight attendant came over and she said to me, what about your mother? And I said, she died. They moved us straight up to first class. They reached us each a glass of champagne to toast my mother's life, which my mother would have loved. And the bottom line is that when I got home, we were home just in time for the funeral, where I was able to tell my mother's soul, my classic story of my mother that many of you have heard many times. I wrote to Aer Lingus and I told them the whole story in more detail than I've told you now. And I just wanted to thank them for the superb staff that they had. And allegedly, they put up my letter in the staff canteen in Dublin, and we were given 2 £100 vouchers for Aer Lingus flights. And this is why, if I'm going up in the air again, unfortunately, they don't fly to Marrakech directly, but I will be booking Aer Lingus, which is Ireland's national airline. So that's my moth story, which I've never told ever in public before. But I thought, since it's up in the air, that's my story. And even though I'm terrified of flying, I am so looking forward to getting on the flight with Colin and Maria and Orla and Nicole and all the people that are going, Eamon, hopefully that are all going to Marrakech, all being well, as my mother would say, if God spares me. So that's my story. But I'm going to follow up with a little folk tale, if that's all right. So you can draw breath. And the folk tale I thought I would tell is by one of my favourite people. His name was Johnny Collins. He's an Irish traveller. I've been talking about travellers with Orla and Nicole. And Johnny told me this story. He grew up not reading nor writing. He wasn't given the opportunity to go to school. He was the same age as me, but like many travellers, he died young. He died when he was just over, about 63, I think. This story happened in Kilkenny, where there was a boy called Jack, and many of you American storytellers are very familiar with Jack tales, but many of them, of course, originated here. So Jack was a teenage boy who wasn't good at reading, he wasn't good at writing. People called him stupid, but he was far from stupid, for he had a gift that others didn't have. He could take any animal and gentle it just with a word. But his speciality was horses. Talk about horse whisperers. He could gentle the wildest stallion with just a pat and a word. Now, when he was old enough, his parents thought they should get him a horse of his own, but of course, they were very, very poor. He lived in a small cottage. All they could afford was a spindly Banach foal. And this foal was so sickly, they said it wouldn't live. But Jack sat with it night after night, giving it draughts, and it grew up into a strong, big black horse. When it was old enough to have shoes put on its feet, he brought it into the castle of Kilkenny, and he waited for the blacksmith to work. But as he was standing there, he saw soldiers running this way, soldiers running that way, swords drawn. And he said, "What's going on?" They pointed to a poster, a placard up on the wall. It was one of those, those curly royal proclamation things. And Jack said, "I can't read it." He said, "You're stupid." He said, "No, I'm not stupid. I just can't read what it says." And an old man told him that the King of Ulster had come down from the north, and had kidnapped the Princess Aoife, the King of Leinster's daughter, and had taken her north. And her father was going to give 5 bags of gold and his daughter's hand in marriage to anybody who can go and get her. "That's the job for me," said Jack. He said, "You're stupid. You can't even read a notice on the wall. Do you know what the people in the north are like? They'd fight with their shadow." Jack said, "I'll make it. I have a big, strong black horse. You take me there." And he hopped on that horse and he rode over hill and over dale until he came to a place, a bog, a moss, so boggy that not even a bird could light on it for fear of sinking. And Jack just groaned and said, "How am I going to get across this?" And a voice spoke. It said, "Put your hand into my left ear, Jack." "Who said that?" "I did," said the horse. "You helped me when I was sick. My turn to help you. I have magic powers." So he put his hand into the horse's ear and he produced a stone, which he threw in front of him, and immediately, shoot, a hard, straight road went right across the bog, and Jack was able to gallop across it. Sure enough, high up in the air, he saw a white hanky waving from a castle. And sure enough, there was the princess. But the next problem, how was he going to get her down? No long hair in this story. Jack said, "What am I going to do now?" The horse said, "Take a hair from my tail, Jack." And he reached down and tweak. Don't try this at home. He threw the horsehair up and a beautiful silken horsehair ladder came down. And Aoife was a perfectly capable girl. She was able to climb down all by herself, hopped on the back of the horse, and off the horse galloped. But the king's men were after them, and it was a long way from Kilkenny up and down again. The horse was flying through the air. The king's men were catching up, and the horse said, "Reach into my right ear." And he put his hand in and he pulled out a piece of turf. We call it a peat. "Throw it behind you." And he threw the piece of turf and shoo, down into the bog went the road and the king's men. Jack brought the princess home, and the father was delighted and produced 5 bags of gold. Jack said, "Excuse me, was there something about your daughter's hand in marriage?" And the king said, "Do you think I'm going to let my daughter marry the likes of you that can't even read a notice on the wall?" And the princess said, "Wait, father, Jack has proven he's clever, he's courageous, he's kind, he keeps his word, and I'll thank you to do the same." Anyway, she said, "I like the look of him." So that's how Jack, a poor boy who wasn't able to read or write, married a king's daughter. And the man that told me that story, the late Johnny Collins, said there's an important message for everybody in that story. Never you call anybody else stupid. And that's my tale. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz. Thank you so much.
With hay fever. Sorry for all the coughing.
Oh, yeah. We're having a heat wave in Ireland, in case people didn't know. That's why we have monsoons and lightning and stuff outside the window here. So we're our pollen count is incredibly high, but we're surviving it. Thank you so much, Liz. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see you on here again. Just some people are asking about booking, how to book the riads, etc. If you go to the World Storytelling Cafe page, you you'll be able to find out all the info on all the different riads and find out information on the festival. Nicole will probably post up in a minute a little bit of a link just to Moth and Butterfly, so you know about what we do. And we're on the third Wednesday of every month. And as Mike said, this is our second collaboration with them, and here's to more collaborations, and we can't wait to get to Morocco. I'm going to do a final story. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to completely change the story that I was going to tell you because Liz Weir has inspired me, as usual, to tell a different story. And then I would like, at the end of that, I will thank all our tellers and our listeners. So we normally in our night do a mixture of improvisational stories, of personal stories, and of folk tales. I was going to tell you a folk tale, but now I think I'm going to tell you a different story. I am. So I'm sitting in a pile of boxes and suitcases in the middle of my sitting room, and there's a wave of anxiety rolling over me. People say that it's a very stressful thing to move house. To move house to a different country, I imagine, is even more stressful. And to move house across continents, well, my stress level was through the roof. Not only do you have to pack and do all the practicalities, but I was leaving behind friends from a decade of my life, things from a decade of my life. And this is way before Marie Kondo gave us the advice, or way before I came across Marie Kondo giving us the advice about choosing things to spark joy. I was putting half of my belongings up on Craigslist, which for Irish people is a bit like Dundee. So you had strangers knocking at your door at all sorts of night, handing you dollars in, and you're giving them guitars and kitchen implements that you really don't want to let go of, and books that you really want to keep. Because I discovered to ship your belongings back from the US to Ireland in those days was way more money than I could afford. I could have bought a small boat in Ireland for the money they wanted to charge me. So I had to sell it or carry it. And as a result, I am limited now to these two huge piles. And I'm looking at things that I really love. They were given to me by people I love and cherish and friends. Things like a wooden spoon, things like my cast iron frying pan. I mean, how could I get rid of this? But it's really not a practical thing to bring from one continent to another. So the phone rings in the middle of all this, and I flip it open, as you did in those days, and it's my cousin Mary. And Mary worked for British Airways, not Aer Lingus, Liz. And Mary was a flight attendant, and Mary was never in this part of the world, but she was coming to Seattle the day before or day and a half before I was due to fly out. And did I want to come out for drinks? Well, normally I'd be over the moon. I'd be thrilled at this, but my heart was so heavy. I was saying goodbye to people. I was so stressed out. All I wanted to do was be like a little tortoise and go inside my shell and just wait it out till I stepped on the plane. The last thing I wanted to do was go out on the lash with my cousin. But I loved her and I hadn't seen her in ages, so I said yes, I would. We'd go out for cocktails. And we did. We had a lovely night and we chatted away and it calmed me down. And during the chats, she asked what flight I was going back on, what day. And I told her. And she said, that's my flight. I'm on that flight. I can take a couple of your bags for you. I have a baggage allowance. You can bring a couple of extra bags. And, I know they won't let you bring a lot of very heavy bags on, but I'll take 2 of them. I was delighted. This meant that I could keep my wooden spoon and my frying pan and some books that people had given me and some little silly things I didn't want to give away. I was so, so happy. So I packed everything up and I said goodbye, and there was tears, and we threw everything into the back of the taxi and we're headed for the airport, and the phone rings and I flipped it open again. Hiya, Mary. I'll see you. What? The flight was overbooked. British Airways are putting on another flight. You won't be on our flight. It was too late to turn back in the taxi. I had a boot full of bags and nowhere to put them. They were really heavy. The flight was oversold. There was no way even I could get them on, even for a large amount of money. What was I going to do? I was going to have to throw stuff in the bin at the airport, my frying pan, my wooden spoon. Well, we got up to the desk finally and we were late. The taxi was in traffic and the lady was there and we explained that we had extra bags. Is there anything they could do for us? And she grumbled and said she'd have to charge us £100, and that was fine. And I didn't really have an extra £100, but there was only one bag could come on, not two. So I would have to throw away things. And I'm desperately trying to shove wooden spoons almost down into my underwear. I'm having to shove things into my pockets. I'm packing a cast iron frying pan sticking out of my carry-on. And we throw out some boots and some books, and she takes a bag, and then she waives the £100 fee because she realised my cousin is a flight attendant. So that part is okay. The bag is on. But I'm late for the flight and I scramble on as fast as I can and I'm sweating. It's a hot Seattle day and everybody's grumpy on this flight. It's a long flight and I'm bumping into people. And I almost take an eye out of a poor man who leans out at the same time as my frying pan is going by in my bag. And I'm trying to shove everything up into the overhead carriage and things are falling out and I'm getting that from people. And you don't want that when you're trying to get your stress level down. And the next thing, I feel a hand on my shoulder and I turn around and it's the grumpiest flight attendant. Well, his face is anyway that I've ever seen. And he says my name and he says, will you please come with me? And my partner looks at me terrified and I look back. I'm going to be thrown off the plane. Maybe did I bring some weird contraband in? Was there camping gas in my backpack? I don't know what's happened. So I follow him towards the door. And I'm almost in tears, like I can't afford a new flight. And we go past the door and we go through the curtains and we're in business class. And we keep on walking and we're going past business class and we go through other curtains and things start to smell different. There's like a beautiful flowery smell. And we are in first class. And the grumpy man turns around and his face changes and he almost winks at me and he said, well, Orla, your lovely cousin looked after my father on a trip a couple of months ago and she gave me a call and said you might be on this flight and you might be a little bit anxious. So let's see what we can do for you. And he showed us to our seats, which were a bed. It was like Venus rising from the sea, a shell. If anybody's ever flown first class on British Airways, it's incredible. Do it all the time. They give us a menu. They handed us a glass of champagne. That's Liz, you just trigger that memory completely. And we slept like babies on our journey home. And when we woke up in the morning, just before we were leaving, the captain gave us a bottle of champagne. And that caused a bit of anxiety because we had to change in Heathrow and we had liquids and no duty-free bag. But we said it was a present from the captain and they let us through. And we walked in with all our bags into Dublin Airport with a bottle of champagne, this wooden spoon and my cast iron frying pan. And that's my story of being up in the air. Thank you so much, everybody. I just want to thank all of our wonderful tellers tonight. We had Maria Gillen from Cork. Maria, you're a legend. We had Jackie Rowntree over in the Aran Islands, but she's in Galway. We had Colin Irwin up in Antrim. We had Eamon Keenan, lovely Eamon up in Belfast. We had, of course, Anya telling us about her beautiful Riyadh, and we had Mike Wood as well. We had Nicole. We had Liz up in Antrim, and of course we had John Rowe in at the beginning, opening the gates of story for us as he does like nobody else. My name is Orla McGovern, and of course now the biggest thank you goes to our lovely, lovely audience, because without listeners there would be no stories. So we'll put some messages into the chat just before we go. That's about where to donate if you want to donate to the International Storytelling Festival. We'd really appreciate whatever you can donate. If you'd like to check out the World Storytelling Cafe website, you can do that. Also check out Moth and Butterfly. And yeah, if anybody has any questions before we go, just pop it in the chat. I had a lovely night. So I just want to thank you all for being part of it. Thank you so much. And give yourselves a big round of applause. Way. Nicole, can we throw it into gallery view there so we can see everyone for a second?
Fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, Orla.
Thank you, John.
And thank you, everyone at Butterfly, everyone who's told tonight, Riyadh, etc., etc. It's been a fantastic night. We've got in the traditional way at the end of every program, I have to say what's coming up. Our next program is nearly as good as yours, but every Tuesday we have our 18 and under years to tell international tellers, and they come from all over the world, from Gaza, from India, from Nigeria, and just the kids are fantastic. And that's at 5 o'clock in the evening Irish time. And the Friday, Chip Colquhoun is launching he's talking about his new storytelling book for children. And then on Sunday, Mike Rust, who's in the room somewhere, will be we link up with Get a Word in Edgeways. And you are all the tellers, and anyone that's tellers is welcome to come and tell. It's the worldwide story round that happens every other Sunday. If you've still got any energy left after the barn and you're not sleeping for 48 hours, please come and visit us next Sunday. Meanwhile, thank you all again, and brilliant. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks to Ali as well. I forgot Ali for World Storytelling Cafe Tech, and Nicole for doing the tech as well, because if we ever forget the tech people, the tech fairies come after us. So we didn't forget them. It's grand. We got them all in time. As we say in Ireland, Slán Abhaile, good night, and thank you for your company and your warm hearts. We will see you again next time.